Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. We have a special one. We have another deck tech, but it's not our deck. It's our good friend, the battle hardened Toronto winner, Nghia Tran in the top right, and then of course I'm joined by my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot Rob, and together we're going to be delving into this Arakni deck because neither me nor Rob has a full set of these stupid cards because they're so expensive. So we'll let Nghia gracefully explain the ins and outs of this deck here. This is a CC deck. This is Arakni CC. We will be talking about Arakni Blitz in a later video, but we are in CC season. I guess ProQuest is the next major event people are practicing for, so we're leading up to the CC deck. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about Arakni. Just the hero. It's very new to a lot of people. Obviously, came out at Dynasty, supplementary set, had quite a few cards attached to it. But what are your first impressions on the actual class assassin Arakni himself and the space they've gone into with deck manipulation essentially?
think I think he's just super interesting. I don't necessarily think he's the best deck, but I think he's super interesting. I think the way you can manipulate the top of your opponent's deck and the way that you could just really out them in the number game feels really good.
Yeah, definitely seems like one of the most efficient decks in the format, akin to something like Bravo or something like that, who is just able to trade resources for life super efficiently with weapons and with 0 for 4s, and your base stats for your cards are great, like 0 for 4 3 blocks, 1 for 5 3 blocks, super fantastic. But let's go over the equipment first. So we're looking here at the February list for everybody here. No glare on this one. So we have a couple pieces of new equipment that came in here: the Black Tech Whisperers and the Mask of Perdition. Then we have some Null Rune, got Tunic, Spider's Bite, and Gauntlet. So Nghia, talk to me about what are the main pieces of equipment you're bringing into most matchups, and then what are the sideboard pieces you're bringing in, and why?
Um, the main board pieces that you're probably bringing in are Black Tech, Mask of Perdition, Ironhide, Tunic, and then the two Spiders Bites.
Yep.
You have AB3 in the slots that I think matter the most because you don't need both Spiders Bites against the Wizards because it's too many resources. There's no way you're going to spend 4 resources on a turn trying to hit them with them for 1 damage each.
That makes sense.
Uh, I usually use Ironhide Gauntlet with Tunic because you want to have as much value as possible. You can run Iron Rot, but I really like the 2 block that works efficiently with Tunic. And then Mask of Perdition, Black Tech, I think are just too good not to run in every single matchup.
Yeah, I think the key is Assassin has very few options. There wasn't any uh elements attached to it or
Yeah.
any kind of subtypes. It's just literally assassin cards, generic
Yeah.
cards, right? So the options really aren't super high. I think one question probably that a lot of people have are what are some ideal use cases for Black Tech and Perdition? When do you actually want to pop these things? What kind of value breakpoints are you looking for? For example, a lot of people consider Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, right? So Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, in Fi, a lot of the times you're getting at least 5 to 6 at least off a Lava Burst. That's the base amount. So whenever you can pop it, I think is worth 5 to 6 damage, and that's pretty reasonable to pop that to force kind of tempo. For Arachne, is there kind of a point where you're just yeah, this is definitely worth the extra banish off Mask, or this is worth the go again because of this card in my hand? Is there any kind of breakpoints like that you're looking for?
I definitely value Black Tech popping a lot higher than I value Mask popping. And I guess it also
Okay.
depends on the matchup because if you're playing the Fatigue matchup, you probably want to be refreshing your Mask as many times as possible in that matchup. So
Yep.
you want to be popping it probably just on site almost every time as long as it's something that their deck can hit. If it's if it's non-attack actions against Bravo, you don't want to do it that much, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're in the late game and you just want that second card to be banished.
Yep. That's fair. As for Black Tech, is there a certain attack action you're looking to kind of combo off? Is it just essentially, oh, I'm gonna hit with it, but I'm only if my second attack is surgical, leave no witnesses, or CNC, or something regardless if it's in the deck, depending on the build. Does it have to be like one of those high value targets, or are you okay popping it for a 0 for 4 or a 1 for 5?
I think it depends on where you are in the game. I think for the most part, in like the early to mid game, you probably only want to be popping it for the cards you said plus Eradicate. Because if you can make them block on the first thing, chip over them, and then maybe throw an Eradicate in there, it's another must block. You might get their whole hand. If they take it, they're just like down 4 cards, right?
Yeah, no, that's pretty reasonable. So it's definitely those power cards I've seen. I'm sure Nia's seen be more representative of like an ideal hand with black tech. But of course, the nice thing is like you only need 2 silvers to bring these guys back, and a lot of the time, of course, different card. I think they pretty much target every card other than instance. I don't think there's an assassin card that targets instance.
There's nothing
Um,
that target instance, but a lot of the instance that people tend to play
yeah,
overlap with other cards, Plunder the Poor,
yeah,
or
it's
Leave
true.
No Witnesses,
It's true.
stuff like that.
Yeah, so there's cost based ones, there's card type based ones, so there's a little bit of everything here. So let's move on to the main deck. Rolling on down here. So I think probably the first question I have is the assassin cards. Are you just straight up running all the assassin cards, and if not, which ones are you not running? Because I think at this point it's like, if you're running most of them, you might as well just ask what you're not running, right?
I think I'm running everything outside of Payday and Regicide. I think those are the only 2 cards that I'm not
Payday and
playing.
Regicide, and
And
I
other
guess
than
no,
Eradicate, no
no,
yellows.
so no yellow shred, I guess, is the other one.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's fair. So looking at the main deck, let's just kind of look at the attack actions first. So walk me through like your red attack actions, I guess, and how they kind of correlate with what your deck is trying to do.
So I'm just trying to play as efficiently as possible. So I think I have all 3 of the 1 for 5s in here. I think there's only 3. Nix the Nimble, Rob the Rich, Annihilate the Armed. Being able to have a 2-card hand where you can just Spider's Bite into a 1 for 5 just feels really good, and it's like really good on rate.
Yeah.
Nix the Nimble is probably the worst out of the 3 of them because it's only hits
It's
reaction cards.
Reactions, right?
Yeah.
It's reactions.
But it's still a 1 for 5, and it still gets rid of one of your opponent's cards, so I really like it. Also, big note, all of the assassin cards block for 3.
Yeah, which is quite nice. Of course, the main thing I guess with Spider's Bite is like turning your blue into as much efficient value as you can. Because if you have to like on a Tunic turn, it's better because you can just like blue use Tunic dagger 0 for 4, and the 0 for 4 is probably hitting unless they have a D reactor non-attack action.
Yeah.
However, I think there's probably better. That's actually another question I had coming in here. As far as Tunic value, do you just like slam that down when you have like a Razor or something like that, or do you like look for the like bite 0 for 4, or using it for like surgical if you have like one floating or something like that? Is there like a particular piece you've seen yourself noticing with this deck that you're using using the Tunic for?
The Tunic I use, usually my first use is Ironhide Gauntlet.
Okay, that's fair.
And then it's usually followed up by the next thing that I do the most. If it's sideboard, then Oasis Respite. Other than that, it's dagger into either a 1 for 5 or surgical extraction, and then if it's a 1 for 5, then I try to boots in another 1 for 5 after that.
Yeah, no,
because that's just 4 resources, and it's 2 1 for 5s and a dagger seems really good to me for 4 resources.
It's pretty good because you're going double digits at that point,
Yeah.
right? Well, as far as overall value for a deck that has mostly 3 blocks, it's quite good, right? So,
Yeah.
I guess I'll go over the rest of the reds, and then Rob can kind of take over for the yellows and the blues here before we go into the sideboarding. So, the rest of the reds here, you're running Razor. Seems pretty self-explanatory. Most cards other than like surgical, I think most other cards are 1 cost or less here, right? So Razor is kind of a no-brainer. To go again is just like gravy because that can represent another damage off of 0 for 4. It's just actually kind of insane.
And not the worst thing. You can Razor a dagger. I have killed a few people doing that.
I mean, it's the same. It's the same as Katsu, right? It's just like nobody's ever like, oh, you have the Razor, you can't play around it. I'm like, well, you just die to a 1, but it's a 4 now, right? So it is a thing, especially later in the game, right? But that definitely makes sense. The sync belows. Are there any other D reacts?
I can scroll
Red
down.
D-Reacts in the deck?
No.
Not in the
Not
main
in the
board.
main deck.
Well, let's talk about why the sinks are in the main board. Why are the sinks in the main board? What's so special about the sink below?
Sync lets you really like go through your cards and also just like if you're pitch stacking and you're trying to go into the later game, it helps you just add to that and get through your pitch stack faster.
Mm-hmm.
Or it lets you just like add cards to your pitch stack. It also just is a 0 for 4 block that you can put in your arsenal. It doesn't matter. The arsenal isn't as important for Arakni because
Okay.
a lot of Arachni's gameplay is a lot of just mind games. You're just trying to mind game your opponent. Do I have the razor? Do I have reaction? Playing that game with your opponent, and then just like sometimes you leave a card on top that doesn't do anything, but it's good in that instance to make them think that they have to go for it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of like different like power card shenanigans. It's like you put it to the bottom, but it's just a card like you're never gonna see for another 50 cards, especially if it's early in the game and you're like bottoming an Art of War or something like that. You're just like, yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, and in the pitch stack game, I watched my opponent against an Oldhim pitch 2 red cards, so I saw a red card on top and I slammed it to the bottom, so he had a triple red pitch.
Yeah, screwing with your opponent's pitch stack, especially in matchups where like if you don't do that to hold him, he will just straight up fatigue. You cannot out fatigue that deck.
That is correct.
You really do have to do it to just like absolutely brutalize. And then they're like memorizing their own stack if they're like a good old and you're just like, hey, you don't know what I put to the bottom. Like you feel like it's just even better because you're not telling them what you're crowning below, but then they're not telling you what they're opting literally every turn, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. So I guess Rob can ask you about the yellows and the blues.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the only yellows you're running is Eradicate. I'm not seeing any other yellows for like any other cards, even in Shred. So I guess one question I have is maybe why is Yellow Shred not being played? Because people kind of assume this is a very good card.
I think when it comes to the reactions, I think the -2 is sufficient enough. Let's say you're coming in for 4 and they block for 4. You're just gonna -2 something. It's gonna be fine.
Right.
If you're gonna, I think you don't need yellow, especially because also the blue enables that dagger plus a 1 for 5, whereas the yellow wouldn't. You would need another card on top of that. I think that just cuts down on efficiency, and Shred I think just like -2 is efficient enough.
Right, it does what it's supposed to do at like pretty much any minus amount, I guess. So
yeah, and if they're overblocking, you're not doing it anyway. You're not going to shred them anyway.
Right, that makes sense. It accomplishes the same thing, but it's not as efficient as pitching for a blue.
Exactly.
Yeah,
at least that's my thought process on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Eradicate, I guess, a must include. Just fantastic.
That card's so good. And the aggro matchup, they don't expect it when you pump that thing up to 10 and they lose 1/6 of their deck in one turn.
Yeah, it's amazing. Cool, yeah. Okay, so I guess that's enough said about the yellows. I can't really see any other yellows you'd want to run.
Why don't you have Art of War in this deck?
Oh,
why don't I have Art of War? I don't think this is
I've seen Art of War in a bunch of Arakni builds. People are saying like, oh yeah, it's pretty good in like a more aggro-y kind of mid-range, like a more pure mid-range Arakni. I would say this is like mid-range on the control-y side Arakni. Not full fatigue, but it's like on the control-y side.
Yeah. I don't think unless you're going specifically aggro Arakni, you don't want to go Art of War because unless you're aggroing them out, you have to either use Tunic or pitch a card to play the Art of War, and then you have to get rid of one of the cards in your deck to just draw 2 cards. And the most common mode is probably going to give your next attack go again.
Yep.
I would rather just play efficiently and then like either razor them, cut to the chase them, or shred them.
Yep. Yeah, that's fair. I feel like like Art of War, like you're right, you are banishing the card, but I feel like sometimes you get like such insane value just off the fact that you're banishing way more cards on one of their turns where they're like keeping, like they've committed to keeping.
Yeah.
Art of War, give the next go again, and they're just like, oh shit. And then you're just like slamming down another 0 for 4 and a 1 for 5, and you've banished a bunch of crazy shit. But I do agree that the card doesn't block, which is like anti-synergy with what you're trying to do with this kind of deck. And it is a very specific card. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on it.
Yeah, I also don't think aggro Arakni is the way.
Is the way to go.
Like if you're aggro Arakni, that means you need to be black teching most turns, and I don't think you can generate that much silver or that much go again. And every other aggro deck will just eat you alive.
Right.
Heyday, baby.
And I was gonna bring up just the black tech accomplish the go again. anyway. So if you are hitting twice per turn, you pretty much will accomplish that goal of getting the go again off of the black deck. So maybe redundant to play Art of War.
Yeah,
A
but
little bit.
you do have to like you have to assume that you're gonna hit 2 silvers off that. So whatever you're playing is like,
Yeah.
oh, you're gonna hit one, and on the
Right.
second one you're not breaking the chain. So it could find either of the contracts, which is
Yeah.
where you're probably gonna get at least 1 silver. But it's
Right.
assuming you still hit. If you don't hit, then you're just like
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah, but then you use cards
So
like
you have to
Shred.
sit
And,
there.
yeah, so you try to get
Yeah,
the hit with
exactly.
one of those. Yeah.
Seems like too much investment for me for Art of War.
It's reasonable. I know how much you
Cool.
love that card though.
Yeah, just sprinkle it into most decks and you're okay. Okay.
I do enjoy that card.
Yeah. So how about the blues then? So I'm seeing that you pretty much run all the blues except for a few cards like you mentioned. You mentioned Nyx the Nimble not being as strong of a card. Rob the Rich as well, so you're not running those blues. Most blues here do cost 0, so I assume most of them are playable in some capacity. But maybe you can walk me through kind of why these blues were chosen. I assume I know why Shred is chosen, but for the other
Yeah.
ones, like I guess they're all mostly playable.
I wanted most of my blues to be specifically 0 attacks, because if I'm keeping one card and let's say, I don't know, I got a 4 blue hand, I want my card to be playable. The only one outside of that, other than obviously Surgical Extraction because that card's
Yeah.
bananas, that I'm playing is Annihilate the Arm, because in the majority of matchups it does hit something.
Okay, yeah.
Whereas like again, Nyx the Nibble not great. We didn't say this earlier, but I'm only playing 2 red Fleece the Frail just for numbers' sake. But yeah, all the other cards
Oh, yeah,
are
right. Yeah.
all the other blues tend to be
0 for 2.
0 for 2s, and I think most of them are good in most matchups. Like Plunder the Poor is good in most matchups, and like Slay the Scholars
Okay.
are just good in like the majority of matchups.
Nice.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
that makes sense. And what's the ratio here in the main board of blues to the reds? I think you have pretty much a good it's a good amount, really.
Yeah, I have 24 blues. So
Okay.
I just want to be able to dagger every single turn, and then I want to also be able to cast my immovable in my board.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of the board, I guess we can move over unless you have any more comments to make about the blues. But
I do. Why?
You
Tell
do?
me why
Okay.
Surgical's worth $40 a pop.
is it actually?
All right, let me go grab my tinfoil hat.
Oh,
Something short
Is it just
printed.
sword printed? Oh, the foils. probably.
Why? Okay, let me rephrase that. Ignoring everyone's monetary concerns here. Is Surgical better than both Leave No Witnesses and Eradicate? And if so, why?
I think it's the second best one. I think
So
Leave No
I-
Witnesses is absolutely the best one out of all of them. It's a 0 for 4.
Mm,
That's also a CNC.
mhm.
Yeah.
like for what reason does it need to be also a CNC?
Well, you could still Fate Sync. You could still like Fate Sync Oasis.
I guess so. Yeah, you can still play D-Reacts. Yeah, but
Yeah,
still,
you still play D-Reacts to
still
it.
really
It's
good.
not
Yeah, but I can
bad,
also
but
razor this thing. I can't razor Surgical.
Mm.
You can
or
try.
CNC for that matter.
You can also try doing that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, it's fair. Okay, so if this is the second best, then why is Leave No Witnesses not $50?
I don't even know. Leave No Witnesses also has the better art.
Mm.
Oh, 100% has a bet. I wasn't even gonna bring that up. That wasn't even an argument, honestly.
I
There's
think
one of
people
them
have
belongs
said
to
that
Matt.
it's short printed, but I don't know if that's true.
No,
I'll
it's
have to
not.
check
Obviously,
back
I don't
on
know.
my
I don't have all the
cards.
data, but
I don't even know how many I pulled in my box openings. I should go back and take a look.
No,
It could also could just be confirmation bias off what people had,
Could
but
be.
100%.
it also could just be true. It could just be shorter printed in the set.
Yeah, I
but-
mean, if it's worth
I'm
that
not
much,
sure.
I think across the entire marketplace, people should have figured out that either A, people are overvaluing it, or B, it's actually, short
it
print.
also could have just got bought out, right? Like people could just be
That's true.
buying this card,
That's
even
true.
which makes no
This
sense.
was like this was a targeted buyout. People realized that
Yeah.
really early. They just didn't know why.
Mm.
Anyways, let's move
Yeah.
to the sideboard before we talk too much about this.
Less-
tall thing.
marketplace is always
The
fun to talk
financial-
about. Yeah, I always love
Going-
talking about that. Alright.
Very small sideboard here. Only 12 cards, so it seems very targeted for various matchups, right? We got CNC, Oasis, Shred, and Unmovable. So why those? Okay, so let's start with the attack action. There's only one of them. What's CNC coming into? What do you have CNC in the deck?
CNC is good against decks that want to like probably not block you that often, like Fi, stuff like
Aggro
that.
decks?
Yeah, just not necessarily just aggro decks because they're like Briar might block this, and she also has the armor to block this. Whereas like
Yeah.
if Fi's giving up his armor, you're You're just having fun.
Mhm.
Yeah. Loses
But
a lot of
also, something that has come up a lot is if you keep two blues in a CNC, use spiders bite
I was
CNC,
gonna bring that up.
and then your opponent looks at you with disgust because spiders bite doesn't only affect assassin cards.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I scrolled up to read just now. I was like, can you spiders bite this? I guess you can.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, you could just keep two non-attacks that block for 3, but that's not as common in a lot of decks.
That's
nowadays,
also
so,
fine with me, you know? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in
That's
aggressive decks, they're less likely to appear, right? I guess.
yeah. Also, just in those decks, they want to put Artivore's valuable cards into their arsenal.
Hmm. That's true.
Uh, so you just want to attack it. Whereas, like, if you play against a deck like Oldhim, Bravo, Dory, these decks all have either a lot of armor or all their cards block for 3. So it's just like they're just not that good on rate.
Yeah.
That's fair. What about the Oasis and the Immovable? Those are the two that I'm gonna group together.
I think those come in most of the same matchup. The only one that is like an outlier is I guess Oasis would come in against like Viserai.
Okay. I was thinking more like Kano and stuff like that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, sorry. Also Kano,
Mm.
but Oasis and Unmovable is really good in the matchups where things are either dominated or go really tall. So Oldhim, Bravo, Dory, things that just like go really tall and you just want to be able to react to it, and you don't, and you want to be efficient about it. So you can tunic Oasis and then you could blue Unmovable,
Right.
and it's just like it's a lot of block and it's really efficient. It actually did help me out in the end game in the game we played. So.
Mm-hmm.
Fair. Which will be out after this question mark. Not after, before, I don't really know at the moment. But yeah, it's very, very efficient for sure.
Yeah.
What was Shred? Red Shred.
Shred is for I'd say like the mid-rangey decks.
Okay.
You want to bring it in because they're probably playing Sync Fates. They're probably playing like cards that block for 4.
Yep.
Just like efficient D reacts, and then you just want to play the numbers game and then shred them.
Yep.
And also against mech, so you can live the dream of shredding their Nitro Mechanoid and breaking it.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. That is fair. Can't like
Why
I
would
guess
you
it,
judge
yeah,
someone
definitely can
like
happen.
ruin their whole
Why?
day? Ruin
Because
their
It's
they
whole
attacked you. Because they attacked you when you had one card in hand. Or sorry, they
blocked.
blocked
Had
the
one card,
Mechanoid.
They
yeah.
blocked. Yeah.
You had one card in hand. Okay, so that all makes sense. So I guess that's pretty much the list here. So let's talk about some of the matchups as far as like very like broad plan and sideboard cards that you're bringing in here. So let's start with I'm not going to go through literally every. There's a lot of heroes coming through this.
And
game.
the longer we go through this, the more heroes is gonna be. So we can't. We gotta
Yeah,
find
the
a way
minute
to group these
Yeah.
together.
So let's talk about like let's start with some of the more meta heroes coming out of Worlds, right? So let's talk about Fi. What's the game plan, and what are you siding in for Fi?
I'm probably just going to side in the 3 CNCs, and your game plan is to hope and pray that
Mhm.
your disruption, like your CNCs, your surgicals, are good enough to get through them, because I think aggro decks are where Arakni really doesn't do
Struggles.
well, because he's efficient at playing the numbers game, but when you have decks like that just break the numbers game, like they just like do way too much damage or they go too wide, then you kind of just crumble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But one thing that I forgot to bring up was when you do sideboard, is there anything you take out of the deck? Because there's 59 cards in the main board. So I'm wondering if you take out 2 cards or X amount of cards when you sideboard in.
It would depend on the matchup, but I think Arachne is also a little fine being a little over, because sometimes if you have to go to fatigue, you do want to be over. Like
Right.
in the game we play, I play 66 cards because I don't want to get fatigued,
Right. That makes sense. Okay.
and it came up.
It did. Okay.
Uh,
That's good.
Sounds reasonable. Okay, so that was Fi. Definitely on the rougher side here. What about the Rune Blaze? Let's talk about Briar and Viserai. Let's start with Briar first.
Briar CNC maybe, depending on the Briar build that's going around at the time. If it's Channel Mount Briar,
Yeah.
probably. If it's just normal Briar, probably not, because it'll just play every single card in front of you. And I would just play Oasis Respite instead.
Mm-hmm.
Viserai, I think you always want Oasis Respite and CNC. I would probably bring in both.
Yep.
And if you wanted, you could shave on Nyx the Nimbles. Other than that, I think you keep everything else in the deck.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your
Sorry. I was
Sorry,
gonna
go
ask: is there a particular game plan against aggressive decks, where you're trying to be more conservative, or you're just trying to get off all these cards as soon as you get them?
Um, Against the aggressive decks, you just want to try to run them out of resources. So you're trying to keep their threats on top and banish those cards because they're probably not going to block. So
Right.
you really want to keep their threats on top, even if you're not getting silver out of the game. The plan,
Mm-hmm.
you're
Just
you're
limiting
getting rid of the
what they
threats,
can
and
do
you
to you.
can't. Yeah,
That makes
like
sense.
if I see an Art of War on top, or if I see a Mordred Tide on top,
Just keep it
if I
there.
see a Channel Mount,
Yeah.
I will keep it there. They won't block, and then they'll be sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes
Because they're
total
like,
sense.
that's not
I mean, that's like their win
that's not a
con in
D-react.
some way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you just want to I think you want to attack their best cards rather than just trying to attack their deck in
Mm-hmm.
general. The only time I would take an absurd amount of damage in those matches up if I can throw a big eradicate at them.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Otherwise, I just want to block a lot of their stuff.
Right.
How big is big? 7, 10?
Uh 7 or 10. I think 7 or 10 is reasonable. I think 10 is very
Where you want to
nice.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. I guess maybe Viserai. We didn't really talk too much about him.
He already mentioned this.
Yeah, CNC
Oh, he
Oasis
did.
comes
Sorry.
in,
Okay. Yeah.
and you probably just try to fatigue them for the most part. The null that I would bring in
Mm-hmm.
would probably be gloves.
Gloves,
Sorry, no, Arcane Lantern. Sorry,
Sorry. Yeah.
I
Lantern.
would have
Yeah.
said gloves
not-
before, but Lantern is good because one Spider's Bite is fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Makes sense.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the mid-range decks. Dory's a good one. Let's start with Dory. What are you doing? What do you do with Dory?
You bring in everything except for Shred.
Mm.
You need a last.
Yeah, I think you just try to. I've played the matchup a few times. You don't want to go too low on your cards, but
Mm-hmm.
when I was playing against, it's hard, right? Like you want to be able to block them and to be able to attack them, but I think if you just play the fatigue plan, you're fine into them,
Mm.
unless they do something like Iron Sun Determination plus a bunch of other like gross stuff.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
why you have like a movable and Oasis and stuff like that. That's just,
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
it.
It's too bad there's no weapon replacement to go into Dory, because like Spider's Bite being really bad into Dory, right?
It's fine because it's always chip damage because they can never block with equipment on it efficiently.
Right.
Unless they
that's
want to
true,
give the
yeah.
2 block equipment to your weapon,
Piercing
then you're
makes
just like,
sense.
sure, no problem, man.
Yeah, it's true. It's always poke when you want it. Yeah, because no one wants to block a 1 attack card with a 3 block from hand.
Yeah.
Or here you have to give a 2 block equipment to fully block. So that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. What about some of the? We've gone through that. Is there anything specific about the? I guess the other mid-range deck that's like coming up more and more is Rhinar. Interestingly enough, I guess not necessarily like the Berserk combo crazy ass deck.
Yeah.
Just the more like control / mid range.
Similar that one. Some of the one, yeah, like similar one that won the calling at California.
I would against Reiner, I kind of like putting in the 3 on the right, so Oasis, Shred, and Unmovable, and I would probably take out like Razor Reflex, and then probably Fleece the Frails. So like you're down 5 cards, but you're up 9 cards. So you're playing 63, but I think 63 is like fine again. But I don't think you want Fleece the Frail because most of the cards block for 3. And then Razor, I don't think you need to try to get over them. I think you need to try to live.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
And target Blood Rush Bella whenever you see it on top of the deck.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Without fail.
That's true. What about the Guardians? I guess we can start with Bravo.
Bravo. I like Oasis, Unmovable. You can run Shred if you think that they're more like if they're a slower build, but if you have no idea, I would just leave Shred out. Because like you're probably not overextending if they're de-reacting anyway. Because if you're overextending into that matchup, you'll probably either deck yourself or it just wasn't a value trade. You probably want to use your de-reacts to either like chip in damage when it's most efficient, or sorry, attack reactions, or when you can just like blow them out with like a big amount of damage.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oasis, not Oasis Respite. Oldhim. You just cry? What
Oh,
happens?
Oldhim just so we talked about the numbers game. Oldhim is the king of the numbers game.
Mm,
He is.
So Oldhim's Earth React disables both of your spiders bite.
yeah,
One card,
it's a good
2
point.
bites.
Yeah.
The matchup is quite hard. I think you have to pitch deck in that matchup to a big attack, and that's about all you can do.
Mm,
Pray you
You
don't have staunch.
just like chip and just like do that. Yeah, I think that's all about you could do. I think the matchup's really really hard. They don't Earth React and like Spider's Bite's okay, but
Yeah, but then they always have crown, right? So like
yeah,
they're gonna be able to take one spider's bite regardless, and then
yeah, it's just
if you have
not
enough
super
pitch for the
efficient.
second one. Yeah, I've definitely it's like the one matchup that I've actually seen personally a bunch, and it's just like, oh
Yeah,
well, Oldham has 8s and 10s for days, which it's like, oh, you 0 for 4, and they can rap hard, they can crown, they could just use whichever one they want. They don't even have to like, and then just keep the prevention for any like bite or any other like reaction.
yeah.
Which is a little unfortunate.
I did forget one matchup that's the hardest matchup other than like outside of Fi. Droma. Droma is this deck's hardest
Unwinnable.
matchup. You cannot kill the dragons
mm,
because like, ooh, it has 2 health. Spiders bite, spiders bite. Ooh, or I'm just gonna
Yeah.
throw my attack
Yeah.
at it, and then they're just gonna be like, okay, here's 2 dragons, and you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, can't do
Yeah,
anything to that.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're playing
Okay.
whack-a-mole, except for you don't have a hammer.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Just using your hands, and 'cause everything triggers on hit on a hero, right? So
You're using
no
like
on
you're
hits
using
for
like
dragons.
pins.
You
You're
have
just
a
using
little
pins.
spoon. You just like
Teaspoon.
Let's end on the Wizards. What do you do against Icelander? That's a pretty popular deck now.
Icelander. I would probably side in
Oasis, I imagine?
Oasis. Yeah, for sure Oasis.
Hmm.
CNC?
And CNC is also pretty efficient, so I'd probably side in CNC. I just like the efficiency of the card. I would side out Razor in that matchup because I don't think you're gonna have that much resources. Whereas Cut to the Chase is free, and the Blue Shard is free. But I think you just want to side in those, side out those. Kano, I think you just put in Oasis CNC because Kano wants to also set up with their arsenal, so just attacking their arsenal is good. Razor's fine in that matchup because they're so low.
Yeah.
I would probably side out if I were to side out a card in that matchup. Bring in 6. I would take out probably the 2 Fleece the Frails,
Mm.
and then obviously AB3 for both of them, and 2 armor for Icelander. Against Icelander also you can AB2 with Tunic if you want to,
Mm.
but I think AB3 will help you more.
Mm.
It really help more. Okay, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
general game plan into those decks?
Kano is just like efficiently do as much damage as possible while keeping like not overextending.
Right.
But you want to put the pressure on because unless you put the pressure on them, if you give them infinite time, they're going to kill you. The matchup is actually very, very interesting though because of how they're pitch stacking versus you're
Yeah,
changing
I
their
feel like
pitch stack.
Right.
Really,
really
really cool.
tough. I think it's real
Yeah.
tough for Kano because you're just like sitting there. You have no idea what's in your pitch stack because every turn there's like another card being put to the bottom.
Yeah,
You don't know
it's
what
a really cool matchup. I played it with my friend a bunch, and I think it's just like super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably want to like kill you faster than rely on like a big combo where you know you're gonna miss for sure because you've been screwed with.
Right.
the whole
You can't rely
punch
on
by
that.
Arakni.
Yeah.
No, you
Yeah.
can't even rely on your stack properly. So that is a pretty fair. What about Icelander?
Icelander, you just have to play as efficiently as possible and kill them in a reasonable amount of time, or else they're going to amass, I guess, Insidiouses, maybe some Frost Hexes if they're on that game plan, and they're just going to chip you out until they can kill you. So you need to kill them in a reasonable amount of time because I think in the early game to the early mid game, I think you're favored, but I think once you start giving them more time, I think they amass too much of a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the classic problem of control versus combo. If you're controlling
Yeah.
forever, it's like you're gonna let them have way too much leeway, and they'll
Yeah,
eventually
exactly.
just kill you out, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard. Yeah, it's a hard balance to strike because your deck is just innately slower, but you have to kind of pump pump the gas into those matchups, I guess, and see how much you can
Yeah.
get early on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Last question for you, Neil. Where do you see this deck in the meta currently coming up to the ProQuest season?
I think if you brought this deck, you wouldn't do horribly, but it really depends on how many. I think the reps matter and your knowledge of the meta matters because
Right.
manipulating the top of your opponent's deck all comes down to your knowledge on the
Yeah.
matchup and your knowledge on your opponent's deck. So unless like you're just like leaving cards on top all the time, you're not doing anything. Like it.
Yeah.
Let's say you're in an instance where you have unannihilate the armed and you want to leave it on top because it's an attack action, but like you want to, you're playing against five. Let's say you want to, I might bottom it just to dig for their Art of Wars,
Okay.
right? Because I just want to get rid of their big cards. Like I don't care if I hit an attack action. Almost this whole deck is attack action.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Just stuff like that. Also against Kano, a really funny thing is when they're trying to get a little pressed for a time, when they're a little lower or their deck's a little lower, uh, if you leave it on top, they start sweating. I was playing a matchup and I left an eye on top, and then they tried to pop off and they KO'd and they hit the eye and they just forfeited.
Cried.
I bet.
It's kind of funny. Yeah, it's like really reverse psychology. It's fun because you can kind of fake it too. You can like leave good cards on top and make them assume it's bad. So it's kind of fun to play mind games like that.
I would say if you're going to bring this to a pro quest, be prepared to lose games that you didn't think you were going to lose, because other decks can do more busted things than you. I think this deck is just like very fair.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, which
For
makes
now.
sense. The game, the deck just came out, right? The hero just came out. Card pool is limited, so it's makes sense to make it fair, not bust it out the gate.
Yeah, the hero is absolutely super fun and well designed, though. I give them amazing props for releasing this hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, contract is an interesting mechanic. Okay, that's kind of all we had for you. Appreciate you coming on. Come on here, showing off the Arakni build here. And with that, everyone enjoyed watching. If you like this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Bye for now.